Welcome to History of the Popes, a podcast that dives into the fascinating, complex, and sometimes turbulent story of the papacy, one of the most enduring institutions in human history. Today we begin at the very beginning with St. Peter, traditionally regarded as the first pope. This episode will explore who Peter was, how he came to be seen as the foundation of the papacy, and what his life and legacy mean for understanding the role of the Pope in the Catholic Church. Let's step back into the first century and meet this pivotal figure. To understand St. Peter, we need to start with the world he lived in. The first century was a time of immense change. The Roman Empire dominated the Mediterranean, with Judea, where Peter lived, under its control. It was a world of diverse religious practices, political tensions, and cultural crossroads. Into this setting steps a man named Simon, a fisherman from the small village of Bethsaida, near the Sea of Galilee. Simon, later called Peter, was not a scholar, a priest, or a political figure. He was an ordinary working man, likely illiterate, speaking Aramaic, and living a life tied to the rhythms of fishing and family. The Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are our primary sources for Peter's life. And while they're theological documents, not modern biographies, they give us a vivid picture of this man. Simon's life changed forever when he encountered Jesus of Nazareth. According to the Gospel accounts, Jesus approached Simon and his brother Andrew while they were fishing and said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." It's a striking moment, Jesus, an itinerant preacher, calling an uneducated fisherman to join his mission. Simon left his nets and followed. Why Simon? The Gospels don't explicitly say, but we can infer some reasons. Simon was practical, grounded, and perhaps had a natural leadership quality, even if it was rough around the edges. Jesus gave him a new name, Peter, from the Greek Petros, meaning rock. In Matthew's Gospel, Jesus declares, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it." This passage, Matthew 16:18, is central to the Catholic understanding of the papacy. It's seen as Jesus designating Peter as the foundation of the Church, with a unique role of leadership. But let's be clear, the idea of Peter as Pope, in the modern sense, is anachronistic. The early Christian community didn't have a centralized institution with a single leader in Rome. The term Pope, from the Latin papa meaning father, wasn't used for the Bishop of Rome until centuries later. What Peter had was a role of prominence among Jesus' disciples, a primacy that developed over time into the papacy as we know it. Peter's personality shines through in the Gospels. He's impulsive, loyal, and sometimes flawed. He's the one who steps out of the boat to walk on water toward Jesus, only to sink when his faith wavers. He's the one who boldly declares Jesus as the Messiah, yet later denies knowing him 3 times during Jesus' trial. This mix of courage and human weakness makes Peter relatable. He's not a polished saint, but a man grappling with his calling. His flaws remind us that leadership in the early church wasn't about perfection, but about faithfulness despite imperfection. Let's look at Peter's role among the disciples. The Gospels often list him first among the 12, suggesting a position of precedence. He's present at key moments: the transfiguration, the raising of Jairus' daughter, and the agony in the Garden of Gethsemane. He often speaks for the group, asking questions or making bold statements. After Jesus' resurrection, Peter is a central figure in the Acts of the Apostles, preaching at Pentecost and leading the early Christian community in Jerusalem. His boldness in proclaiming the risen Christ, even under threat, shows his transformation from the wavering disciple who denied Jesus. Now let's address a key question. Was Peter really the first bishop of Rome? This is where history and tradition intertwine. The New Testament doesn't explicitly say Peter went to Rome, but early Christian tradition strongly supports it. By the late 1st century, writers like Ignatius of Antioch and Clement of Rome refer to Peter's presence in Rome. And by the 2nd century, figures like Irenaeus explicitly link Peter to the Roman Church. The tradition holds that Peter was martyred in Rome under Emperor Nero around 64 to 67 CE, crucified upside down because he felt unworthy to die, as Jesus did. Archaeological evidence, like the excavations under St. Peter's Basilica, suggests a tomb associated with Peter, though definitive proof is elusive. The idea of Peter as the first pope rests on both his role as the rock and the belief that he established the church in Rome, the empire's capital. Rome's prominence gave its bishop a unique authority over time, but in Peter's day, the church was a network of small communities, not a centralized institution. Peter's leadership was more about spiritual authority than administrative power. The concept of the papacy as an office developed gradually, shaped by theological reflection and historical circumstances. Let's consider the historical context of Peter's martyrdom. Nero's persecution of Christians followed the Great Fire of Rome in 64 CE, which he blamed on them. Christians were a small, marginalized group, seen as a strange sect within Judaism. Peter's death, alongside Paul's, cemented Rome's place as a center of Christian memory. The idea that Peter's authority was passed to his successors, the bishops of Rome, emerged later, as the church sought to define its structure in a growing and often hostile world. What did Peter's leadership mean for the early church? He was a bridge between the Jewish roots of Christianity and its expansion into the Gentile world. Acts shows him navigating tensions between Jewish and Gentile Christians, like when he baptized the Roman centurion Cornelius, a pivotal moment in opening Christianity to non-Jews. His decisions weren't always consistent. He wavered on the question of Jewish law for Gentile converts, as Paul recounts in Galatians. But his role as a unifying figure was crucial. Theologically, Peter's primacy is tied to the Catholic doctrine of apostolic succession. The idea is that the apostles, especially Peter, passed their authority to their successors, ensuring continuity in teaching and leadership. This doctrine, formalized later, sees the Pope as Peter's heir, inheriting his role as the Church's foundation. But in Peter's time, this was less about formal office and more about his lived witness to Christ. Let's reflect on Peter's legacy. He's not just a historical figure, but a symbol of the Church's human and divine dimensions. His strengths, his courage, his preaching, his leadership laid a foundation for the Church's growth. His weaknesses, his doubts, his denials remind us that God works through imperfect people. The papacy, as it developed, carried this duality, a human institution with divine purpose, rooted in Peter's call to be the rock. As we close, consider what Peter's story tells us about leadership. It's not about power or perfection, but about responding to a call, even when it's daunting. Peter's journey from fisherman to martyr shows the transformative power of faith. The papacy, built on his legacy, has shaped Western history in ways Peter could never have imagined. Next time, we'll explore how his successors in Rome began to define the role of the Pope in a rapidly changing world. Thank you for joining me on History of the Popes. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, and leave a comment on YouTube. Until next time, Keep exploring the rich history of the Church